response. So you're in year 12, unfortunately. So what that means is it's very much open to you. In the same way your English teacher will, say you should have a 5-paragraph essay. Some of the things are sort of non-negotiable, but from there, a bit of creativity doesn't go awry. So, this is an old slide, but you've got your whole structure. Thematic approach is what we're all going to use in theory, and maybe perhaps in year 11, unit 1 and 2, you might focus on a subsystem approach. That's useful mostly for you to kind of clarify and revise the way that things fit within different subsystems. At year 12, you should obviously be leaving that behind. And then, as I've written down there, good grade suicide option. You can do it in chronological order, which would, of course, it would function a little bit like a list, but you sort of say they did this, then this, then this, then this. But of course, if there is a text that is perhaps, say, a recipe or something that is clearly chronological, then it might make sense, perhaps, maybe, sort of, to use that structure. But again, you'd probably need one of the other structures as sort of a backbone to make sure that you're doing your register, your social purpose, touching on context, function, discourse features, stylistic features, all those things. So keep that in mind. I'm not ruling it out completely. And again, the subsystem approach could maybe, in very rare and extreme and strange cases, be appropriate if there was a text that was in some way suitable to be matched with a subsystem approach. So it's not just the best 1 and 2 also rans, but it kind of is. Okay, basic stuff. It's an essay, so you're not saying I think. You're using formal standard English, as we know how to call it in English language. You're going to quote something, you're going to use a line number. If you're talking about something that goes across multiple lines, you might want to use sort of ellipses to break up the quote, kind of say they focused on ... cows ... and animals, sort of break it up that way. That way you don't have to say line 33, 34, 35, 36. But always try and do quote and line number, unless it's far too long and you're talking about something that spans multiple lines. You might want to do it that way. But there you go. I've remembered to include the line numbers in brackets, line 34. Easy as that. There's no conclusion necessary, but a lot of high-scoring students have spoken about a concluding sentence or two, some way for them to finish strong, some way for them to prove that they've got a little bit of insight into, the content area and that they've thought about it a little bit more deeply than just saying, here's a list of metalanguage. Thanks for reading. All right, introduction. So this should look familiar for Unit 1 and 2. We've got farms, but we've also got a little bit of added stuff, social purpose, register, and one other feature that you're going to talk about. So social purpose, register, and context should be included somewhere in your introduction, but also because it's an introduction, it's leading into your next thing. So whatever you're going to talk about, it's worth foreshadowing, worth signposting, worth saying, I'm going to talk about this, then this, then this. You're obviously not as boringly as that, but do a little sentence of kind of outlining what's going to come. Make it easy for the reader so they know what's happening and where it's happening. All right, you could do it this way. I find it difficult to recall just sitting there, that we've got 5 circles attached to a central stem. But if you want to use it, if it helps you, if it works, all over to you. Field, mode, setting, function, relationships. So opening sentence, we're just going to talk about register and text type. That's just your basic, like you would in a language analysis. You say this is a letter to the editor, it's an email, it's a newsletter, whatever it is. Then you're going to establish the field. What are the main topics? Semantic field, semantic domain. Then you're going to talk about your mode, or actually, according to this, main purpose and social purposes. What is the main reason this text exists? And what are some secondary reasons? So keep in mind, you always want to go primary, secondary, tertiary, probably not, but you can if you want, if it suits. Establish relationships, so who's communicating, what are their relationships, and the audience, how do they factor into it, how's it all work? And then finally, establish setting physically and also culturally. Where is it happening? Does it matter? And is there something cultural you might need to know in order to make sense of it? And of course, you'd outline that there. So that's one of the options for your introduction and a way you could approach it. Then we go back to our CRAMP, which we've talked about in our annotation video, but again, could be useful for your introduction. Context, situation, cultural, probably leave out the social, doesn't really add too much information that's not present in the other two. Talk about all those things. Again, this sort of would tend to make a little bit of a swollen introduction, and you probably don't want to spend too long on the introduction. In the same way, you don't really need a conclusion. As I used to always say to my mainstream English students, an introduction isn't really going to, bring home the bacon. It's not going to, bring applause to your amazing essay writing skills. It's something that you need to do to make it clear to your audience what's going to happen, but don't spend too long on it, and don't go into too much detail. So context, give us the key talking points, what's most relevant. Register, give us an outline that's really precise, and then later on you can explore it and pull it apart and make it more complicated and convoluted. Audience, primary, secondary, who are they, how do they interact? Mode, written, spoken, digital, signed. You know the drill. Purpose, why was it written, what is it trying to achieve? So another option to approach it can work, whatever you prefer. Body paragraph structure. So the whole point of this idea is to stay flexible. Register, social purpose are a keeper. It's hard to get rid of those unless there was somehow a text that didn't have a register and didn't have a social purpose. I can't imagine what that would be or how it would work, so those are always there. Context is mentioned, as you notice, throughout the examiner's report, so it's something you should talk about, as is stylistic features and discourse features, and it's sort of up to you how you make that fit. Usually, as a general rule, I would focus on a 3-paragraph essay, but some people promote 4. Again, some texts might be suitable for 4. So just stay flexible, but keep in mind these is kind of more a checklist than it is a formal structure that you must always follow. There's options in it, it's got ideas built in. All right, so there's another teacher who's posted videos onto YouTube, so I'm going to pull apart her essay structure for you as well. So she's promoting a 4-paragraph structure: contextual features, register, coherence and cohesion, or prosodic features, depending on what text type you're looking at, and stylistic features as separate chunks. So contextual factors, or features rather, are of course situation and cultural context. So talk about that, how it's sort of proven, how you can establish that through the text, not just from the context bit at the top, but how's their actual language prove that as well. Register, formal and informal features. So again, you want to add modality there. Third, you've got your coherence and your etc. Prosodic features, depending on the text type, and you've got the whole list of metalanguage that you want to include there. And then coherence and cohesion. Well, actually, this is the prosodic features, but these are some of them: laughter, backchanneling, all the things that we know already. And then stylistic features, just broken it down by subsystem, which might be useful because it's a different way than how we break it down using acronyms. So obviously you're focusing on the important stylistic features that really pop for the text, and of course no text will have all of them, and no text will kind of have none of them. Otherwise it wouldn't be included in the analytical commentary. All right, so you've annotated, you've got your text, you've got your plan, introduction's done. How are we going to actually set out the paragraphs? A couple of options, all very similar to be honest, but different acronyms. Okay, this one's easy to remember because it's very similar to TEAL that you would have had hammered into your head in mainstream English. FEEL, feature, evidence, example, link to situational context, purpose, function, whatever's relevant for the text. But of course, it's basically the feature. You're going to say, this is a formal register as is shown through this quote, which is an example of etc. Explain it and then link it to the purpose of the text and then who's saying it and how it all fits together. If you don't do that last bit, you'll miss out on many marks, and that's sort of the important thing for you to explore. And it's kind of the fun part, really. Like locating techniques is something you could probably train a computer to do, but to link it into the situational, the human context is the tricky part that you possess. All right, then there's FE, feature, evidence, explanation, concluding sentence, not mentioned but possible. So again, same thing. This, if you followed this strictly, you'll notice in the explanation it says link to social purpose, function, etc. So basically it's the same as FEEL, but they just hide the L in the E to make it harder to remember or something, I'm not sure. Option number 2, we've got PQE. So point, what is the point you're making with the meta language, of course. Quote, add a quote, line number embedded within your own writing. So you never just want to drop it in like it's someone else's work. Explanation, explain the quote, how it relates to the point in the context of the paragraph. So of course, register, social purpose, etc. And then concluding sentence, not mentioned but possible. So of course you could if you want, but it's not really that essential. You don't necessarily need a linking sentence because jumping from register to social purpose is not the clearest jump usually. So linking sentences aren't really that necessary unless you really need them. This one, TFEE, topic sentence, identify a feature, give one example. So, obviously there'll be more and more and more. So it's sort of TFEEEEEEEE, on and on and on until you feel like you've made your point. And then of course, explain the purpose of the above feature, very important, and then rinse and repeat. So obviously you can have more than one example within a paragraph. That's importantly what this structure teaches you, but that's true for all of them. And yeah, so whichever one of these fits for you is useful for you. Memorize that, practice it, apply it, and keep doing it over and over.